Pressure is a privilege. If there's no pressure, there's nothing amazing on the other end, but it's how you see the pressure. Do you make it worse than it is? Do you call it pressure, or say this is an opportunity?
That's speaker, author, and mental performance consultant Collin Henderson talking about how the top performers approach high-pressure situations. In this episode, he joins Dan to break down the top techniques for developing a mental and emotional game plan so you can perform in the clutch. As you listen, ask yourself this question: are you focusing on the pressure or the process? I'm Kylie Schmitz.
I'm Dan Lappin, and this is Breaking Sales, a nonconformist take on rejecting the sales status quo. Join the Lappin 180 team as we break the tried and died sales tactics and techniques that are failing you and your prospects. We're coaching a lot of people in sales who've got 15 and 20 years experience, and they're using a lot of the same old sales standards. And I don't mean to make that sound as a negative, because some of those standards have worked for a lot of our audience. But the reality is those same standards aren't working near as much. And one of the things that I was thinking about is this whole idea how athletes, right, they visualize performance. This visualization idea, I love sales professionals, the idea of them getting good at it. It's like hard to even begin what I want to help share with them. So can you give us some thoughts or share some of your thoughts when you think about someone learning how to become better at visualization?
Well, I love to say this phrase, Dan, is that everything happens twice, first in our mind, then in real life. The brain cannot tell the difference between a real and imagined event. So fear and faith have a lot in common. So if you have this process where you're thinking about your account, your customer, and you visualize failure or not getting the deal, not getting the account, or not getting that engagement, like your brain is storing those memories, and your subconscious sees that. When you're in that reality, you start to attract those things. So I think as a good just primer for life is to practice to visualize things that you do want, to have these images, but also if you can attach an emotion to that vision with gratitude, love, abundance, that's going to strengthen that connection even further. And I learned all this stuff because I struggled with anxiety and worth tied to outcome, like all the awesome stuff that you teach, And I had a mentor who gave me a list of books, and he said, Collin, sales psychology beats sales strategy. Here's all these books on business and selling, but like, really, has any selling book ever helped you make a lot of money? No, these books on mindset, the power of belief, goal setting, self-talk, power of self-image, courage, how to manage fear, habit forming, gratitude and service. So I got all these books, and I found like these like common themes that everyone's saying really the same thing in different ways. So I developed my own priming system to visualize every single morning and to visualize before every big call. So it's really 3 steps. I call it the HA method. I have, I am, I will. So I have is just focusing on just abundance and gratitude, focusing on what you have, focusing on who you are, not who you aren't, and just taking a notice, man, I don't have to do this. I get to do this. And I'm going to focus on my strengths and how I'm different and unique, and not get so bogged down on why I'm not like them or why I don't have this. And there's some good science on what happens to your brain, your body when you have gratitude. And then the I am is just affirmations, just affirming who you are. I've put in the work. I'm ready for this. I've trained. I'm excited to bring some value today. And then I will, as you set your intention. I mean, how many calls do we waste, Dan? How many calls, because these veterans, you mentioned the veteran reps, they're so talented, so much experience. I can do this in my sleep, but you have some blind spots and you're not even prepared to maybe be open to have a new tactic or to listen to something new. You just keep doing the same old stuff. So have a clear intention, but visualize it and see it. Walk it through in your mind.
Yeah, one of the things I know I've struggled with is affirmation. Every time, Collin, I think about affirmation, I think of that character from Saturday Night Live when he's looking in the mirror and he's saying to himself, I know I'm good enough and doggone it, people like me. I don't know if you remember that, but
I do.
And then what I read once too, and I'd just like to get your thoughts on this, we have to be careful with affirmation. But then again, I could have been doing it wrong. And so like if I say to myself, I want to make $500,000 a year or $1 million a year or $2 million a year, and I've never done any of that. I can't say I'm going to make $1 million a year, because the little voice inside me might say, not yet. You've never done it before. Are you sure about that? But what I have heard is a flip side is saying something like, I'm in the process, right? I'm in the process of learning what I need to learn to make $1 million a year, or I'm in the process of making the mistakes that I need to make $1 million a year. Because then it takes the pressure off ourselves, like we're not lying to ourselves. So can you go a little bit more into affirmation? Because I know that's a big skill set that I think a lot of people struggle to get good at.
Yeah, well, I do like that you just walked us through process over outcome, your habits, your routines, and being passionate about the journey. We like to say the journey is the reward, not just the outcome, because you can't control, guarantee what the customer does, what the exact number amount you make. But I will say this though, I'd rather you set some high hard goals and just miss than set these low goals and hit. I think a way to access flow is to set some high hard goals, but then get your worth tied to the process and the growth. So affirmations. Let's just ask some questions, listeners. What percent of human thoughts are negative? The answer is 80%, and 95% of human thoughts are reoccurring. So if you let your brain just does what it wants to do, it's going to go negative. The brain is like Velcro. It holds on to negativity like Velcro. It's like Teflon if it's positive. So it's going to want to replay your past mistakes and think about why you can't do something. And that high hard goal, I'm not worthy of that. But I think with affirmations is you don't have to say these phrases that don't have merit. Well, your affirmations can be, I've put in the work. Let's list some examples. I've had success in the past. Let's write down some examples and just recall those. So that's called being credible with your affirmations. You can say your affirmations, but not be credible with that. So for every affirmation, under the affirmation, well, is there proof that you're working towards that in terms of how you know your product, or you have mentors, you have a coach, or you've done the back work to get prepared for this? Like that is an affirmation too. But I will say this, I love to talk and teach people on the skill of confidence. What I found looking at the research, people will follow the confident person over the competent person, which could be scary actually. So the number one source of confidence, listeners, if I would ask you, we're at a workshop and I come up to you, I have a microphone, and say, hey, tell me, where do you think confidence comes from? What do you think, Dan? Maybe I'll ask you that question.
From your experiences and your beliefs.
Yeah, I like that you add belief second. So most people say, well, you've done the work, or you've done it before, or you've prepared, but like, well, how many times have you been in a big meeting with a big client, like a lot on the line, or you're in this like new environment, but you've had success previously. You've trained and you're ready for that moment, but the moment's too big and you sabotage it because your brain is going all these negative places. So research from the BBC lab in the UK, 44,000 patients, they found that self-talk is the number one driver of confidence, because 7 out of 10 people, Dan, suffer from what is called imposter syndrome. I'm an imposter. So a way to override that is, how's your internal voice? How's your language? What you say to yourself has 10 times the power versus what other people say to you. It creates what's called this thought cascade. Your words and your thoughts influence the pictures that you see, emotions that you feel, and actions that you take.
So let's slow some of that down. Go back to credible affirmations. I like that a lot. Is that something that our listeners would journal, right? Because isn't there something about writing it down that solidifies it for us or makes it very real or clear?
Yeah, so for my affirmations, or just for like creating confidence, we call this developing your internal advertising campaign, your ad campaign to yourself. Just like companies advertise why you should buy from them, are you advertising to yourself why you're going to bet on yourself, why you belong? Because a lot of people think themselves into failure. They don't think themselves into success. For example, just to use sports as an example, in football, the average play is like 5 to 6 seconds. The average time in between each play is like 25 seconds. In a 3-hour football game, there's only competition for 6 seconds each play. So that's 11 minutes of football. There's 2 hours and 49 minutes where they're not competing. So they can think themselves into failure. They don't train for that time in between each play. So as sales professionals, we know our product, we know our service, we know we have like a business plan, but do you have a mental game plan? Have you thought about what you're going to think about to give yourself the best chance to execute? Most salespeople don't, and business is the ultimate sport. It's no different. So how I do this ad campaign is like, we're going to have a game plan on what you're going to speak to yourself in that moment. You have time, because we have time to ourselves to wait, right? And your brain can go wherever it goes, and it's gonna want to go negative. It's like gravity. What goes up must go down. Your brain's gonna want to go negative. So we need to have a mental emotional game plan to pre-plan our thoughts. This is called thought replacement. You can only focus on one thought at a time. So let's have a plan. So I really think about four things. The first one is you would have just a note card and just give me some examples of like times when you had success, some achievements that you're proud of that you can go to remind yourself, actually, I'm not an imposter. I've done these things before. This is actually not outside of, it's not a stretch for what I can do. And then number two is, how have you prepared for this moment? How have you trained? What's your plan? Do you know the customer? Do you know your sales tactics? So it's like, why would you do your role plays and practice if you don't trust? But you're just reminding yourself, I've had success before. I've actually put in the work. And I love number three is what we call anchor statements. What I call anchor statements. So you're going to pick three words to affirm who you are, maybe your values. So how you teach, have high intent. Have high intent. How you're going to show up. So my anchor statements, I say, I am authentic. I am present. I am courageous. I am authentic. I am present. I am courageous. We become what we think about most of the time. It's like an anchor on a ship. If there's no anchor, we call this the drift. You're gonna drift off away from being present, from the environment, the moment. And then I think the fourth one is what are your focus keys? What do you want to execute in that moment?
So when you're in that moment, right? I love the idea of the anchor thought, which is, hold on, my idea here is I'm only here to determine how and if I can help. That's the example of what you're saying, which is your instinctual thought in sales is because you're competitive and you're driven is, man, I hope this goes well. I hope they see my value. I hope they give us a second meeting. However, the anchor thought should be, hold on, I'm only here to determine how and if I can help and are they even ready? Is that kind of an example of what you're saying?
Yeah, and I kind of break it down this way. It's what's your intent, right? Like, what's the goal? What do you want out of this, and how you're going to show up? Number two is learn. Like, what's something you want to learn? What's something you need to uncover that you are sincerely curious about? The third one is just value. Like, how are you going to bring value? So what's your game plan? Like, how can you help and serve them? And a lot of times, maybe you get nothing back, but you have this intent. Like, is this the right fit? But I want to help you regardless. And it might not be. It might not be. Maybe I can give you an article, or I can refer you to somebody else who is a better fit for your needs. But I think a lot of times we just show up and throw up, and we just start talking too much. So I like to say we sell in three dimensions. The first dimension is you just talk about yourself. You go in and talk about you and your product. The next level, selling in 2D, is if you know the market pretty well. Like, you can educate them on the market. But level three, this like 3D selling is, man, you know them so well and you're in tune with their language, with their needs, and you really make it about them.
So when you're coaching, whether it's athletes or business individuals, what are some of the things that you try to instill in them so that they can perform in those clutch pressure moments from a mental standpoint, from a mindset standpoint?
I like to ask questions to get an understanding. So I'd ask the person I'm training, CEO or an athlete, like, tell me how you would define the word clutch. My definition of clutch is doing what you normally can do when it matters most. We don't rise to the occasion. We follow our systems, our training, and just, the things that we worked on. So I think a lot of people mess up those calls is because they make the moment too big. They actually change how they normally would just talk to a human being, and they become like a robot, and they put too much pressure. So I'll just give an example. So from 1998 to 2008, Tiger Woods went on this absolute tear that the PGA Tour had never seen before. And if Tiger had a lead, or if he was within like one or two strokes, he'd never lost. But what they did some research, and they found that Tiger's scores were the same on Sunday as Saturday, as Friday, as on Thursday. People just got worse on Sunday because they couldn't handle that pressure. Tiger just stayed the exact same. And a way we do that is we have routines. We have routines. Routine is that comfort zone. Routine is we get to that default mode. Focus on the process, not the pressure. And don't change your routine, your process. If it's a client that's low revenue potential versus like you can make millions of dollars, why would you change your process? What you wear, the type of ways you engage, how you share your deck, the type of activities that you do. Now, you could tailor it for that customer because you know some of their needs, but trust the process, man. Like, keep it the same.
You know what's funny is it's so true, but I also know it's one of the, I hate saying it's one of the hardest things for a lot of sales professionals to do is change that process.
But they don't even have a process. They just wing it. They don't have a system routine. They just roll in.
Athletes, right? They get coached on process. They don't have a choice, do they?
No. Well, and how about this? Let's keep going on the golf thing. All right. So I like to remind performers of all types about a golfer. Her name is Christy Kerr. In 2010, she set the largest margin of victory of any golfer ever. And when they looked at her swings, in her 260 swings, she had the same pre-shot routine for 254 of those 260. So all her focus was process, routine, breath, not outcome. Dan, do you ever lose your keys or your wallet?
My keys sometimes.
Well, most people who lose their key in their wallet, they don't have a spot that they put that every day. So your routine is that spot that you go. It's that comfort and that calm.
So if we're going to summarize, what would be the top things you would recommend to our listeners to do from a mindset standpoint pre-prospect conversation?
I would make the main thing the main thing and have a process plan. So the first thing we already talked about is write down, have a self-talk game plan. What you're going to say. Don't hope for confidence. You would write down all the things that we just talked about. I've had stuff before. I put in the work. I'm going to anchor my thoughts in these truths about myself. I'm going to then the fourth one, as I talked about, what are your focus keys? What are you going to focus on in the moment? If you're running track, head down, arms pump, I'm a bullet, I'm going to explode. If you're baseball, hands back, quiet head. So as a sales professional, you would pick your focus keys. Okay, really great eye contact. Be very patient with this customer, very patient. So you'd pick some focus keys you want to execute in that sales call, and you'd summarize it into like 3. That just quiets the noise. The best focus on less, not more. Now, other part of this process over outcome is what gear are you going to wear? Let's keep it consistent. Do you wear black? Do you wear a polo? Do you wear button up? Let's keep that gear the same. But if you watch, a snapshot, a picture of the GOAT Tom Brady from 2009 or 2013, or the game they played this on Monday, he wears the same stuff, like the same fit. What we want to avoid is what's called decision fatigue. And we try to wasting precious brain energy to figuring out, okay, what backpack or what shoes or what shirt. Let's simplify that. That's a lot of times overlooked. Well, let's have, what do you wear to give yourself confidence? And then have that pre-call routine, the same prep that you do. Keep that the same. How you engage. Now, on top of all this, Dan, is you want to have a process plan with your actions and your habits. How many outbounds per day? How many live events? How many lunches? How many coffee things? So that's the process too. So just focus on that. I was talking to a new friend of mine. He's a speaker, coach, author, trains a lot of people. He calls these POCs, points of contact. That's the process. I'm gonna get in 20 outbounds per day. I'm gonna do X amount of live meetings per day scheduled. So that's the process. You can't control what happens with all that, but you can control your actions.
Yeah, you mentioned something earlier too that I know that we haven't touched on that plays into all of this as well, right? And that's the imposter syndrome. And I see that happen for sales professionals where they're used to calling on certain size companies with certain types of problems at certain titles. And then all of a sudden, they're being coached or encouraged to do what we call, right, go up market. And going up market is where I think that imposter syndrome hits the most. When you go from meeting with a vice president to a C-suite, or you go from talking and conversing and doing business with a middle manager to a C-suite. And I see that's a gap that a lot of our clients struggle with.
And that's all a mental game right there. There's real pressure, there's fake pressure, real fear, fake fear. But I like to remind anybody I'm training this truth. The person with nothing to prove is the most dangerous person in the room. What, you're going to be different because they're an executive versus mid-level? Clutch. Do what you normally do. Why would you change because they have a title that's different? They're human beings. They're just people. And they have similar fears as you. So I would just go in with that and walk in that you don't prove anything. I like telling the story. actor George Clooney. George Clooney, early in his acting career, would go into these auditions and he would say, I have to get hired. I have to get booked for this deal. And the group that would, ask the questions, like he was just get all worked up. And he failed his first year or two in that game. He said, once my mindset shifted that really the pressure isn't on me, the pressure is in the casting director. They have to hire the right person. It's their budget on the film, not my budget. So therefore, the pressure on me, I got to be myself. There's going to be more auditions. He said, with that mindset shift, that the pressure on me, the pressure is on them. He killed it. He was getting hired all the time. So when you go into these meetings, the pressure not on you. The pressure is really on them. So you get to be yourself. You get to just provide. This is what we offer. This is the value add. Let's find the right fit.
So let me add something to that. I think that's really good. My gut is if we had about 50 sales professionals in a room right now talking to both of us, and they heard that comment, they would say, Collin, Dan, that's great. It's a great concept, but I do have a quota and I have bonuses, commission, and a job that I've got to perform at. So I do feel the pressure.
I'll say this, pressure is a privilege. If there's no pressure, there's nothing amazing on the other end, but it's how you see the pressure. Do you make it worse than it is? Do you call it pressure, or you say this is an opportunity? I mean, I love to serve. The more value I provide, the more valuable I am. If your focus and mindset is all on the pressure and what could happen, what if I don't happen, you're not present. The top performers, they don't worry about the pressure. They love the moment. They love the engagement. They love the challenge. So I love talking about flow. Flow is being in the zone. Flow is this state that we're in where there's no time. You're not judging. You have a clear goal. You're getting feedback. But this is the key part about flow. The activity is the reward, not the outcome. The activity is the reward, not the outcome. So if you want to be great at something, you can't just do it because of bonus and this. You do it because you love the hunt. So you can focus on the pressure all you want and say have to, but that's not going to give you the best chance, and it's going to kill you emotionally, mentally. I mean, you're going to be super stressed out, anxious, and that's attachment to outcome. That's that mindset of scarcity, which you teach. So I've just seen this is the healthiest, best way, and it's going to give you, to be patient, to not have. Do I have to get it, or no? I get to be here.
So do you run across people who have stopped challenging themselves?
Oh my gosh. I mean, how many people in sales industries, they've been in the same role, which is totally fine. And they just want to, they just get comfortable. They just want to get the check, and they know the drill, and they just want to get, what's the bonus this year? But are they thriving? Are they flourishing? Sometimes I want to wake people up and say, the worst thing you can say is this is how we've always done it, or I am who I am. Like, I hope that my wife doesn't say that about me. I want to be evolving together with her, and I want my skills to be developing as a sales professional. Growth and comfort zones cannot coexist. There are 3 zones we operate in: comfort, stretch, or panic zone. Comfort is just as dangerous as living in this panic zone. We need to stretch our stretch zone every single day. And that's what the best performers do. Because like you teach, man, detach from outcome. It's okay to fail. It's okay to not get it right the first few times. But once you keep growing and evolving, I really believe the ultimate fulfillment is in growth.
How can someone in our audience start doing what you just shared, specifically around going from comfort to stretch, where they've been comfortable for so long? It could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be longer. How would you help them, or what suggestions would you make to help them take that next step to stretch?
Well, the first one would be, let's look at some old stories that we're holding on to about ourselves, about talent, gifts, skills, traits. There's got to be some old stories that we got to poke some holes in. That's not even true. Like, you can do this. You have the skills to do that. So I think that's the self-image. I like to say you never outperform your self-image. Our limits begin where our vision ends. So you're holding yourself back. But the second thing is your environment. Like, who are you around? We have what's called mirror neurons. We model and mirror what we see. Show me your friends, I'll show you your habits. Show me your habits, I'll show you your future. So if you can get a better story about yourself, and you can grow, from Carol Dweck, growth mindset versus fixed mindset, you can improve and get better. Let's challenge those old stories. But number 2 is get around better people where empathy and drive and creativity and having a growth mindset is actually normal. So the first one was story. The second one was environment. The third one is legacy. What type of legacy are you leaving? There are two pains in life: the pain of regret and the pain of hard work and impact, man. Like it's work, but it's worth it. So ask your friend, what's your legacy? Just being lazy? Like, how many lives are you helping? Like, just within your own family? Like, how, are you elevating people? So I want my legacy, man. Collin impacted people. He made people. He was a servant leader. You know, he carved a path. Like he blazed a trail. And with legacy, is like, what happens when you're done? This is from the great American poet philosopher Macklemore. He says, "I heard that you die twice. The first time was when you're buried in the grave, and the second time was the last time someone mentions your name." So what are you doing to help people, man? And the more value you bring, the more money you make. Just the way it goes.
It does. It's all about the gratitude. It's all about the abundance. When you think about athletes and their mindsets and all the athletes that you've worked with, both professionally and in college and all that, what are the struggles they go through mentally? Is it the same as in sales, or is it a little different?
I think it's exactly the same because I felt it in business and in sports. The biggest thing I think we have to be aware of is not, and I feel like we say the same stuff. We could keep going back to it. Attaching your identity to one thing. Like, I am a basketball player, or I am a sales professional. So you're getting your worth tied to doing and not being. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And then when you go on Instagram, you start to judge and compare yourself to other people. Where are they at? Again, scarcity. I think just detaching worth. I'm a human being choosing to place where I'm a human being choosing to be in business and to have this product I'm selling. And because I struggle with anxiety because I was so caught up on the result. I have to perform well. I have to do well. And your self-worth is tied to performance. So your happiness is basically tied exactly on how you do. And that's just unstable. And it's not fair to yourself.
Yeah, it has to be a little harder sometimes on athletes because, right, they're brought up because a lot of them have got God-given talent, and everybody talks to them as if they're like the second coming of whomever. And then they play college, or maybe they play pro, and everybody worships them. And all of a sudden, right, the real world hits.
It's true. So here's the drill. I mean, I'm all about application, my friend. So this is what I call your me wheel. So most performers, think about a bike. And if a bike just has one spoke holding it together, what happens if it hits a pothole or a curb?
Done. You fall off.
You're done. It's not stable. So, but that's why they're so up and down emotionally with their craft. So if we can add some more spokes to that bike, well, you're not only a performer, you're also a person of faith. You're a son or a daughter. You're a brother or sister. You have friends. You love music. You have other hobbies. You like to volunteer. You love arts and crafts. Like, so if we can have a more balanced image of ourselves, and the story that I tell to anchor this concept of having a more balanced me wheel is I tell the story of Steve Young. He was at Cal Berkeley giving a guest lecture during his prime. And a student said, "Steve, you've won MVPs, you've won Super Bowls. Like, how do you do it? What's your secret recipe to your success?" And Steve was in a suit and he adjusted his tie and he looked at the student and says, "That's a good question. I would give all my success to one thing. I'm a lawyer. I'm not just a football player. I'm about to get my law degree. I practice law. I'm a person of faith. I'm a husband first. I'm a father." He's like, "I'm not just a football player. So when I'm out there playing, like, everything's not riding on this game. So I have this perspective that I'm more than one thing." We tell performers, master these 5 words. These 5 words are going to change your life. I'm not defined by this. It's human doings versus human beings, man. We're not human doings. We're human beings. So that's why core values are so important. Have you identified behaviors and traits that matter the most to you? And let's get our worth flowing through that.
Collin, how can our listeners get a hold of your material?
You can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn at Collin Henderson, Collin 2 L's. I have a podcast, which is called Master Your Mindset Podcast. And on Amazon, if you search my name, you get all my books.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Sales. If you want to get engaged with us outside of this podcast, be sure to go to our website, lappin180.com. That's LAPPIN180.com. And there you'll find information on upcoming workshops, different events we're doing throughout the United States, ways to engage with us on social media, as well as a form where you can suggest topics or guests for the podcast. We want to hear from you, so don't be shy. Kylie out. All right. Do we have another episode?